Jake was halfway through his morning coffee when he heard a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting visitors, and in this neighborhood, unexpected knocks were rarely good news. He set his mug down, stretched, and swung open the door. Standing there, clutching a clipboard like it contained the secrets of the universe, was none other than Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She pursed her lips like she had just sucked on a lemon. "We need to talk," she said, her tone dripping with artificial politeness. Jake sighed. "Karen, it's too early for whatever this is." Ignoring him, she thrust a folded letter into his hand. "Your brother is in violation of our HOA guidelines. If this continues, there will be consequences." Jake unfolded the paper and skimmed it. As soon as his eyes landed on the words, he nearly choked on his laughter. "Mr. Ryan Carter has been seen repeatedly wearing unauthorized attire in the neighborhood, specifically military camouflage. This disrupts the visual harmony of the community and may be intimidating to other residents." Jake blinked. He read it again. Surely, this had to be a joke. "You're serious?" he asked, trying to suppress a grin. Karen's expression was stone-cold. "Very." Jake leaned against the doorframe, shaking his head. "You're telling me my brother, who just got back from serving his country, can't wear camo in his own driveway?" Karen's nose twitched as if the word country personally offended her. "It's not about him. It's about the rules. HOA policy clearly states that residents must maintain a neutral and non-disruptive aesthetic within community spaces." Jake let out a slow breath, forcing himself to remain calm. He had heard ridiculous things from this HOA before, but this was next level. "Karen," he said, rubbing his temple, "do you have any idea who my brother is?" "I don't care if he's the mayor," she shot back. "Rules are rules." Jake couldn't help but laugh at the irony. If only she knew. Later that day, Ryan was in the backyard, standing over the grill, flipping steaks like he was conducting a military operation. He had been back for less than a week, trying to enjoy his well-earned rest, and the last thing he needed was HOA nonsense. But as soon as Jake handed him the letter, his easy smile faded. Ryan read it in silence, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he exhaled and handed the paper back. "They have a problem with me wearing camo?" he asked. "Oh, not just camo," Jake said, barely containing his laughter. "They think you're disrupting the visual harmony of the community." Ryan tilted his head as if waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, he simply nodded. "All right." Jake narrowed his eyes. "All right? That's it." Ryan smirked. "Oh, I'm going to have fun with this." Before Jake could ask what he meant, the universe answered for him. Because at that moment, Karen appeared at the edge of their yard, arms crossed, nostrils flaring. "You received the letter," she said. Ryan, still holding the tongs, looked at her like she was some kind of bizarre mirage. "That I did." Karen cleared her throat, straightening her posture like she was about to discipline a child. "I expect you to comply immediately." Ryan turned his attention back to the grill, flipping a steak with careful precision. "That's funny," he mused, "because I don't recall enlisting under the HOA." Jake stifled a laugh, but Karen was far from amused. "This is a private, uniformed community," she huffed. "We have standards." Ryan finally looked at her, really looked at her, and then, with the straightest face in the world, he snapped to attention and saluted. "Yes, Commander Whitmore," he said. Jake lost it. He had to turn away to keep from outright cackling. Karen, however, did not appreciate the humor. Her face darkened as she glared up at Ryan, who, despite his casual stance, radiated an air of controlled authority. "This isn't a joke," she said sharply. Ryan scratched his chin, feigning deep thought. "I don't know. It's kind of hilarious." Karen inhaled sharply, clearly struggling to maintain control. "If you don't comply, we'll have no choice but to issue fines." Ryan's grin widened. "What's the going rate for wearing pants these days?" Jake nearly collapsed laughing. Karen, seething, snapped another photo of Ryan, probably for her growing file of HOA war crimes, before storming off. The second she was gone, Jake turned to his brother, grinning like an idiot. Dude, you have no idea how much I needed that. Ryan smirked, grabbing a plate for the steaks. She thinks she can out-regulate me? He shook his head. I've dealt with warlords who had more flexibility. Jake wiped a tear from his eye. I cannot wait to see what you do next. The following morning, Jake woke up to find Ryan standing in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing his teeth. But what caught Jake's attention wasn't the morning routine. It was what Ryan was wearing. Full military fatigues, tactical boot, even his beret. Jake leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Really? Ryan met his gaze in the mirror and grinned, toothbrush still in his mouth. Oh, it's war now. An hour later, Ryan casually strolled out to check the mailbox, still fully dressed like he was about to jump out of a plane and into a combat zone. A few neighbors peeked through their windows, some clearly entertained, others whispering in concern. And then there was Karen, standing on her porch, gripping her phone like she was about to report a crime. Jake sipped his coffee, watching the chaos unfold from the safety of the front porch. Karen stormed across the street, heels clicking aggressively against the pavement. This is an escalation, she snapped. Ryan turned, as if just now noticing her. Oh? I thought we were enforcing dress codes. Karen's eye twitched. This is not funny. Ryan nodded solemnly. I agree. Dress code violations are a serious matter. Karen's face turned a dangerous shade of red. You think you can mock the HOA? Ryan's smile was almost lazy. I don't think, ma'am. I know. At this point, Jake had given up trying to hold in his laughter. Karen, visibly trembling with frustration, lifted her phone. I'm documenting this. Ryan saluted again. Make sure to get my good side. That was the last straw. Karen turned on her heel and stormed off, furiously typing into her phone. No doubt preparing another formal complaint. Maybe even drafting a new HOA amendment specifically outlawing military personnel from dressing like, well, military personnel. Jake shook his head. You're playing a dangerous game, man. Ryan grinned. You say dangerous, I say entertaining. Jake had to admit, he was enjoying this more than he should. But something told him Karen wasn't done yet. And he was right. Because later that evening, an official letter from the HOA arrived. And this time, it wasn't just a warning. It was a formal notice of violation, with threats of escalating action. Jake read it aloud, then looked up at Ryan, who calmly chewed his steak. She's doubling down, Jake said. Ryan leaned back in his chair, utterly relaxed. Good. Jake raised an eyebrow. Good. Ryan took another bite, chewing thoughtfully before replying. Because now? Now I get to have some real fun. The next morning, Ryan was already up before Jake even rolled out of bed. When Jake finally stumbled into the kitchen, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes, he found his brother sitting at the table, sipping coffee with the same calm expression he always wore before a mission. Except today, his mission involved taking on the homeowners association instead of enemy combatants. Jake sat down and grabbed a piece of toast. So, what's the plan, General? Ryan smirked. We're going full camo. Jake arched an eyebrow. Define full camo. Ryan simply stood up and walked out of the kitchen. A few minutes later, he returned, fully decked out in military fatigues from head to toe. Not just his usual casual camo gear, but the real deal. Tactical vest, combat boots, and even his unit patches. He looked like he was about to deploy. Jake nearly spit out his coffee. Dude, you look like you're about to take over the neighborhood. Ryan nodded approvingly. Exactly. Jake chuckled, shaking his head. Karen's going to lose her mind. That's the point, Ryan said, grabbing his car keys. I'm going out. Jake blinked. Where? Ryan grinned. Everywhere. Jake followed him outside and watched as Ryan casually strolled to his truck like nothing was out of the ordinary. Except, to everyone watching, it was very much out of the ordinary. A couple of neighbors watering their lawns paused, their eyes widening as Ryan, fully geared up, waved at them like it was just another Tuesday. Jake stood on the porch, shaking his head in amusement as Ryan got in his truck and drove off. He had a feeling today was going to be interesting. A few hours later, Jake was lounging on the couch when his phone buzzed. It was a text from one of their neighbors, a guy named Chris who lived down the street. "Bro, your brother just walked into the grocery store looking like he's on a Black Ops mission. Karen saw him. She's on the warpath." Jake grinned. He didn't even need to ask what happened. He could picture it perfectly. Ryan walking through the aisles of the local store, grabbing eggs and milk like a regular person while dressed like he was about to conduct a covert operation. And Karen? She was probably foaming at the mouth. A few minutes later, the door swung open and Ryan walked in, setting a bag of groceries on the counter. Jake folded his arms. "How'd it go?" Ryan smirked. "Karen nearly had an aneurysm in the produce section." Jake laughed. "Did she say anything?" "Oh, she tried," Ryan said, pulling out a carton of eggs. "Started ranting about community standards and how I was making a scene. But then, and this is the best part." He paused, shaking his head like he still couldn't believe it. Jake leaned in. "What?" Ryan grinned. "Some guy in the store recognized me from a news interview a while back. Shook my hand, thanked me for my service. Karen looked like she swallowed a lemon." Jake nearly fell over laughing. "She must have been fuming." "She was." Ryan put the groceries away, still grinning. "And then she made the mistake of calling store security." Jake's laughter stopped. "Wait. She did what?" Ryan nodded. "Yep. Said I was causing distress and asked them to escort me out." Jake's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." "Nope," Ryan said. "Security showed up, took one look at me, and guess what?" Jake smirked. "They recognized you." Ryan nodded. "Not just that. One of them was a former soldier. He saw my unit patch and immediately called me sir." Jake burst into laughter. "You're telling me Karen called security on you, and they ended up saluting you instead?" Ryan nodded, grabbing a bottle of water. "Yep. She stormed out after that." Jake shook his head, still laughing. "Man, she's gonna lose it." "She already has," Ryan said, taking a sip of water. "And she's not done yet." That prediction turned out to be correct. Later that afternoon, a second letter from the HOA arrived. This one wasn't just a complaint, it was a formal warning. The language was harsher, filled with phrases like failure to comply, escalating penalties, and legal action. Jake read it aloud, then looked up at Ryan. "They're really doubling down." Ryan leaned back in his chair, looking utterly unfazed. "Good." Jake frowned. "Dude, you keep saying that, but you do realize Karen is crazy enough to take this all the way, right?" Ryan smiled. "I know. That's what makes it fun." Jake sighed, shaking his head. "You're enjoying this way too much." "Of course I am," Ryan said. "This isn't a fight she can win. She just doesn't know it yet." And as it turned out, Karen's next move proved just how far she was willing to go. That evening, as Jake and Ryan were sitting outside, enjoying a couple of beers, a police cruiser rolled into the driveway. Jake's eyebrows shot up. "No way." Ryan took a slow sip of his beer, completely unbothered. "Called it." The officer stepped out of the car, looking more exasperated than anything. He approached them with a clipboard, glancing down at a piece of paper before looking up. "Ryan Carter?" Ryan nodded. "That's me." The officer sighed. "We got a call about an intimidating presence in the neighborhood." Jake snorted. "Let me guess. Karen?" The officer didn't confirm it outright, but the look on his face said everything. Ryan remained calm. "I see. And what exactly was the complaint?" The officer flipped through his note. "Something about military attire being disruptive to community standards and causing psychological distress to other residents." He looked up, deadpan. Which, I gotta say, is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Jake grinned. So, what happens now? The officer sighed again. Nothing. You're not breaking any laws. Hell, half the guys on the force are vet. If anything, I'd say the only person disturbing the peace is the one making these complaints. Ryan nodded. I appreciate that. The officer chuckled. Honestly, I'd tell you to take it easy, but I think we both know you're enjoying this. Ryan smirked. Just a little. The officer shook his head, clearly amused. All right, well, you gentlemen have a good night. As the cop drove away, Jake turned to his brother. So, let me get this straight. Karen called the police on you, and they ended up siding with you instead? Ryan nodded, completely unfazed. Twice in one day. Jake laughed. She's gotta be losing her mind. Oh, she is, Ryan said. And she's going to keep digging that hole. Jake exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Man, she really doesn't know what she's up against, does she? Ryan leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. Nope. Jake shook his head, still in disbelief. What do you think she'll do next? Ryan smirked. Whatever it is, it's gonna be desperate. And he was right. Because the next morning, Karen made her boldest move yet. Another HOA letter arrived, but this time, it wasn't just a warning. It was a formal notice of legal action. Jake woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand. Groaning, he reached over, blinking at the screen. It was a message from Chris, the neighbor who had been keeping tabs on Karen's meltdown. Dude, she's lost it. HOA board meeting. Emergency session. You guys are on the agenda. Jake rubbed his eyes, already feeling the exhaustion of dealing with this nonsense. He rolled out of bed, stretched, and walked into the kitchen, where Ryan was already awake, sipping his morning coffee like a man with no worries in the world. Jake sat down and ran a hand through his hair. So, apparently, we're part of an emergency session now. Ryan didn't even look up from his coffee. Of course we are. Jake exhaled. You think she's actually gonna push for legal action? Ryan smirked. She's trying to bluff. She thinks if she escalates enough, I'll back down. Jake shook his head. She clearly has no idea who she's dealing with. Ryan leaned back in his chair. Nope. A few hours later, Jake and Ryan stood outside the HOA meeting hall, staring at the group of board members inside. Karen was at the head of the table, arms crossed, her face twisted in satisfaction as she glanced at the stack of papers in front of her. Ryan walked in first, exuding the same calm authority he always carried. Jake followed behind, taking a seat next to him. The room was tense, as if everyone was waiting for a bomb to go off. Karen cleared her throat. Mr. Carter, we've reached a decision. Ryan gave her a polite smile. Oh? Please, enlighten me. Karen slid a document across the table. You are officially being fined for non-compliance with HOA regulations. If you refuse to pay, we will be forced to take further legal action. Ryan glanced at the paper, then leaned back. You do realize I'm an active-duty military officer, right? Karen scoffed. That doesn't exempt you from the rules of this neighborhood. Ryan nodded. You're right. It doesn't. But you know what it does exempt me from. Karen blinked. Ryan pulled out his phone and scrolled for a second before turning the screen around. Federal law. Karen's face twitched. Jake grinned. Oh, you don't know, do you? Ryan placed his phone on the table, playing a short clip from a government website. The video clearly outlined a federal law protecting active military personnel from discrimination in housing policies, including HOA restrictions that unfairly target their service. The room went silent. Karen's lips thinned. That's irrelevant. Ryan raised an eyebrow. A federal law is irrelevant? Karen straightened her posture. We are an independent homeowners association. Our regulations are legally binding. Ryan took another sip of his coffee. No, they're not. Not when they directly violate federal law. Karen's eye twitched. One of the other board members cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. Karen, is this, something we checked before issuing the fine? Karen shot him a glare. This is about maintaining community standards. Jake grinned. Pretty sure federal law outranks the HOA handbook. Another board member sighed. Karen, I don't think we can actually enforce this. Karen's face turned red. This is an internal matter. Ryan smirked. Not anymore. See, I called a friend last night. He works with the legal team at the base. Turns out they're very interested in what you're doing here. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You called a military lawyer? Ryan shrugged. I figured since you wanted to take legal action, I should be prepared. Karen looked like she was ready to explode. The board members exchanged nervous glances, clearly realizing that they were in way over their heads. One of them sighed. I think we should table this discussion. Karen turned on him. No. We cannot allow this to stand. Jake leaned forward. Karen, let me ask you something. If this goes to court and you lose, what do you think happens next? Karen's jaw tightened. Ryan answered for her. It means not only will the HOA be forced to drop every single one of these complaints, but you might also face legal repercussions for targeting an active duty officer. A bead of sweat formed on Karen's forehead. Another board member coughed. I think it's best if we just drop this. Karen glared at him. You're giving in? We're avoiding a lawsuit. Karen looked like she wanted to scream. She gripped the papers in front of her so tightly her knuckles turned white. But she knew it was over. The HOA had no choice. If they pushed forward, they'd be in deep legal trouble. Finally, she exhaled sharply. Fine. Ryan smiled. I appreciate your cooperation. Karen stood up so quickly her chair nearly toppled over. Without another word, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The remaining board members sat in awkward silence before one of them sighed. Well, that was eventful. Ryan stood up, shaking a few hands. I hope we can all get along better moving forward. Jake grinned as they walked out of the meeting hall. So, does this mean we won? Ryan smirked. We won the battle. Jake arched an eyebrow. You think she's gonna try something else? Oh, absolutely, Ryan said. People like Karen don't just give up. And he was right. Over the next few days, Karen tried everything, sending passive-aggressive emails, putting up flyers about proper neighborhood attire, even stopping random neighbors to complain about the threat to community values. But it didn't matter. The board had made its decision. She had lost. Then, one evening, as Jake and Ryan were relaxing on the porch, they saw it. A moving truck. Karen was packing up. Jake stared in disbelief. No way. Ryan smirked. Told you she'd dig her own grave. They watched as Karen barked orders at the movers, her face twisted in frustration. She spotted them across the street, and for a brief second, they locked eyes. Jake gave her a little wave. Ryan, ever the professional, simply nodded in acknowledgement. Karen turned away, muttering something under her breath as she stomped back inside. Jake grinned. I can't believe it. She's actually leaving. Ryan stretched. She made herself unwelcome. This was inevitable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the neighborhood seemed lighter, more peaceful. The reign of Karen Whitmore was officially over. That weekend, Ryan hosted a barbecue. It was a celebration, a way to bring the community together after all the drama. Neighbors who had been too afraid to speak up before finally shared their own HOA horror stories. Laughter filled the air as Ryan flipped burgers, and for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood actually felt like home. As they sat around the fire pit, beers in hand, Jake nudged Ryan. You realize this is gonna be one of those legendary stories people tell for years, right? Ryan smirked. Good. Jake chuckled. So, what's next? Ryan took a slow sip of his drink before answering. Well, now I get to enjoy my vacation. Jake laughed. You earned it. And for the first time since he got back, Ryan finally got to relax. No battles. No wars. Just peace. and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of well-earned chaos.